Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Well, thank you for come here and allow me to interview you. Uh, so you wants to run for the school board, the Central Group School Board.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's because you live in the school district, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So why do you want to run for school board?
Well, like several of the parents in the Center Grove area, I'm not really happy with a lot of the things that are going on in the Center Grove School District. I'm not really happy with the direction of the school board. And instead of sitting around on the sidelines complaining, I felt like I was in a unique position to make a difference.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. And do you have some specifics, like what kind of things the parents are not okay with or not happy with?
Well, there's been several things. When I think when people first started getting really upset, one of the first things that people were really worked up about was the masks. And a
Okay.
lot of people thought that the only reason that I was running was because of the masks, and that once the
Oh,
pandemic went away, then I'd have nothing else to talk about. It's kind of a one-trick pony. But
okay.
there's so many other issues out there, like teacher pay, teacher benefits,
Mm-hmm.
the the quality of education that the students are receiving, I don't think is really on par with where it should be. I don't
Okay.
think a lot of the support staff are receiving the pay and benefits that they should be receiving. And yeah, I'm really frustrated with the way parents are treated when they have questions or concerns. I don't like the atmosphere in the schools right now.
Well, okay. Can you be more specific on like the school environment? What
So
what's your concern there?
So for the students, there's several issues.
Okay.
I've heard from some parents that their students complain that there's racism and bullying,
Mm-hmm.
and to some extent, you probably see that everywhere.
Right.
Most recently, we saw the issue of the blackface after
Right.
the football state championship win.
Uh-huh.
And for good reason. There's some legal protections for the students. A lot of people don't really know the totality of the situation, how all that was handled. There's
Right.
still a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
Um, but even before that, there were still kind of some accusations of some racial back and forth going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that needs to be looked at. Also, the whole LGBTQ issue. There's a group of students that doesn't feel like they're safe, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
that they're bullied, which my understanding is that has led to a group of students forming a club
Mm-hmm.
of sorts, and as a result has led the school to allow pride flags to be hung in certain classrooms as a symbol of that classroom being a safe place
Oh, okay.
where those students can go to seek help and resources.
Uh-huh.
Um, that presents challenges of its own. And with the pride flags, then there's other students that feel alienated
Okay.
by those flags' presence and feel like they're singled out because they don't agree with those flags being in the classroom and things like that. So
Mm.
it's putting students against each other,
Oh,
where the kids have enough to worry about in this day and age. They really
right.
shouldn't be trying to tackle those types of issues. They should just be concentrating on their academics and
Okay.
sports and extracurriculars if they choose. Um, and then the parents, they're being put against each other, either pro-mask, anti-mask, pro-vaccine,
Right.
anti-vaccine, pro-flag, anti-flag.
Uh-huh.
And then teachers are in this really precarious situation where there's all this new legislation where I don't think any anyone has a true understanding of the intent or the practical application
Right, right.
of the legislation if it gets put through.
Mhm.
The legislators, I don't think that they speak the same language as the teachers and administrators.
Definitely not.
The teachers and parents, I don't think that they understand what each are expecting of each other.
Mm.
And you have this just big mess where no one really knows who to trust. Everyone thinks that everyone's the enemy. And there's just a lot of backbiting and no one really trusts anybody. And all
Wow.
communication is broke down. No one really respects anybody. And you see that kind of boiling over in the board meetings as well.
Mhm.
And then when parents go to the board meetings, they're not allowed to speak. They petition to have certain things added to the agenda. Those requests are denied.
Okay.
They're not given a reason, they're just denied.
Right.
At our most recent board meeting, I signed up to speak. I wasn't allowed to speak. So this is something that's still happening.
Oh, wow. What's the reason they give to you?
Well, before the end of the last board president's term, they pushed through a verbiage change to the rules where you could only speak on agenda items.
Huh.
And the rules of the board say that if you want something added to the agenda, there's a certain way to do that. Well, anything that parents are trying to get added to the agenda is denied. So there's really no recourse for parents,
Right.
except to pressure their legislators to take action.
Right.
And the legislators, they get so many parents that are hammering them, we got to do something. Elections are coming up.
Right.
We don't want to lose our seats. So we got to do something.
Right.
And then they come up with these monstrosities on paper that, they seem like they hit all the right pieces, but then the practical application of that,
Right.
everyone looks at that and they're like, well, how are we going to do this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And well, I grew up in China, and so I have seen so many things which mean unintended consequences of policies. Yeah. So sometimes that's why I kind of, in a way, I really don't want to give any more power to the government.
Right.
And also any policy they implemented, eventually the teacher will, will take, how to say, will get the worst end of it. And because everything the administrator is supposed to do, they'll pass down to the teachers. They'll put a lot, restrictions on the teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. And the teachers are scared because a big part of some of the new legislation is being able to hold the schools and teachers liable for some of the infractions that they may either willingly or unwillingly or knowingly or unknowingly commit. Say something they're not supposed to, or not get permission for something that they should have, they could be held civilly liable for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, and some of this may just be propaganda pushed by the teachers unions. They're saying, well, you're going to have walk-offs. You're not going to have teachers teach classes.
Right. Yeah, definitely the teachers union are trying to make this more than it actually is. So like I have been kind of involved with those bills. I give testimonies at the State House. But like you mentioned earlier, it's really because there is no communication between parents and the school boards. And so therefore parents has to go up to the legislatures.
Right.
Which is very, yeah, it's really sad because school board are supposed to be, accountable to the parents, to the voters.
Yeah.
But in many school districts, it's always school board is acting like, I don't know, like they are the boss. so the treat the parents like, you guys don't know anything, let us handle this.
It's like a little fiefdom where
Yeah,
they think that they're the ruling class, and who are
exactly.
you if you have an opinion?
Right.
Where, in November, 3 of those seats are up for election.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times they forget that they're elected officials and they serve at the will and pleasure of the public.
Right, exactly. So far the Center Grove School Board still don't want to hear from parents, right?
No. The only way you're allowed to speak is if you are speaking on something that is on the agenda.
Yeah, but you cannot get onto their agenda.
Correct.
Yeah, this is actually, I don't know uh, if that's the case for other school board, but this is kind of extreme. Like, can basically shut down parents. They don't allow you to say anything.
Yeah, it's pretty strict. It's censorship at its finest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So, well, thank you for, you know, step out and to run for school board. I mean, uh, in a way, it's school board. In a way, well, in some ways, it's kind of like a thankless position because you're going to. Some people, you always some people won't be happy with you.
Right. And it's not for glory or money.
Right.
The pay is set, I believe, by state constitution. It's only $2,000 a year.
Right.
So
For
it's
yeah.
not like anyone's doing it to try to
No,
put a new
nobody's
Lexus in
really,
the
yeah,
driveway.
right. Nobody's doing that for the money, but um, I don't know, but I know some school board members, they were supported by teachers unions. So they do have some kind of political kind of agenda behind it. But for you don't, you're not associated with any political organizations, right?
No. In Indiana, you don't declare a party when you run for school board. And truth be told, if I had to pick a party, I'm probably more libertarian than anything.
Right.
I think that government's influence ought to be just enough to get a job done
Right.
without interfering with the personal lives of people.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Mm. Well, by the way, I'm also running for school board, and my concern is really the quality of education. Both my kids, they graduate from, they went through elementary school and middle school, and my son did 2 years in high school, and then I pulled him out and homeschooled him. And a couple of things for that. One is that he was not challenged. He gets so bored in school. I mean, he's pretty smart um, boy, and so we took him out. And also he was saying like there was drug issues in Center Group. I don't know how what's the current situation now, because he said that back then you smell marijuana. I mean, pretty much you smell that every day. So, and my daughter, she finished middle school, then I took her high school. I took her to Greenwood Christian Academy, just because the influence I saw in Center Group is not good on her. Yeah, so I'm more kind of trying to make Center Group a better place for students, and also I taught for 7 years. I understand the teachers' difficulties, especially administrations have too much power over the teachers. So I also want to help teachers to, in a way, to allow their voices to be heard. Because right now we really don't hear from them. We'll hear from teachers' unions, but not from individual teachers.
Right. That's actually something my wife and I were talking about today, that
Mhm.
it would be great if you could get a few teachers in a room and a couple administrators in a room and a group of parents in a room, and they agree to some basic ground rules that there would be respectful communication,
Mhm.
and that administrators would agree that anything that was said stayed in the room, and that there'd be no reprisal, no, well, I'll remember this come evaluation time.
Right.
And, parents could voice concerns, teachers could say how things really happen, and administrators could kind of shed some light on what they're dealing with.
Right.
Because I don't think anyone really has a true picture of what the other's dealing with.
Right. Yeah. It's very, we need that communication. People will need to get to on the same page. Otherwise, you just imagine things, right? Things are not true. And normally when you're trying to imagine things, I think most people are trying to think the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
And even the rare chances that you are allowed to speak at a board meeting, they don't answer your questions.
No, never.
So essentially you go up there, if you're allowed to speak, you rant for
Yeah.
3 minutes and then you go sit.
Right. Yeah, that's it. They hear you, they have no expression on their faces, so you don't know if they actually hear about it. And sometimes some board members are playing on their cell phones, so you really, yeah, I don't think they take parents' concerns seriously.
I really don't think that they do.
Yeah, it's just so sad. And another things I'm concerned about is really the critical race theory. So even though they say that it's not, in school it's not taught, which is true, it's not taught, but the ideology is being applied. Like, for example, the synagogue used to have on their website, they have this book by Ibram X. Kendi, How to Be Your Anti-Racist. And that is recommended reading for high school students and teachers and parents. And that book is just purely neo Marxism. It was basically saying America is inherently racist. Now, when you say something is inherent, that means that is permanent and that is part of the system, right? Like,
Right.
then how do you eradicate racism? So their answer is basically is to destroy our system, is how destroy our country as it is. So that is communism. It's actually calling for communist revolutions. So, and another concern I have is that when my wife was a graduate school at the IU Bloomington, that was about 10 years ago. She was doing her master's degree at school education at IU. And her professor basically told them that their job is to make social activists. And I think this is pretty common in many education schools all over the country. So the new teachers in the past like 10, 20 years, they have been indoctrinated. And they think, so that's why they are not focused on academics. They are more focused on how to, build a better society. Now right now the word of day is how to be an anti-racist, and that is not public schools are supposed to be. Right? We are trying to give them a good education so that they can be successful in their life. We're not trying to turn them into some kind of political activists.
Right. And one of the biggest issues that I take with the whole idea of whether it be CRT or SEL
Yeah.
or DEI, it's misusing the tax dollars that the
Right.
school system's been entrusted with.
Yeah.
A perfect example of this, Center Grove has hired a DEI consultant, coach, navigator, whatever title they want to give the person, but it's a diversity specialist
Okay.
of whatever title you want to call that. And
Yeah,
the person gets paid as much as the average starting salaries of 2 teachers.
right. It's $90,000.
We have a teacher shortage. We have teachers that are giving up their prep period that they already are complaining that they don't have enough time to prepare for
Right.
the classes, and
Right.
they're having to take unpaid time at home or on
Right.
the weekends
Yep.
or in the evening when they should be resting and getting ready for the next day of work,
Right.
so that they could be at their best for our
Right.
students.
Right.
And they're still working, and they're not getting compensated like they should, but we have
No.
money to hire someone,
Right.
and no parent was consulted.
No.
There was no public vote. There was no referendum. Just find out one day, we have someone that we are going to employ, where
Right.
we could employ 2 more teachers to
Right.
take some of the burden off of the teachers that are already overstretched.
Right.
And they're going to make us more diverse, or at least make it more seamless.
Well, that's kind of what caught my attention, kind of alarmed me last summer, is because I heard Indiana, the state government, we have this chief DEI officer, and then Commonwealth Clay School District hire a DEI director, and that kind of remind me of the political officers when I was growing up in China during the Cultural Revolution, because their job is basically indoctrinate the teachers and the student. And similarly, that's their job here, is really, there is an ideology that they look at everything. I mean, that's why, that's where the CRT, one of the ways CRT got through, because those specialists or directors, they were trained in CRT, and that's how they look at things through the lens of CRT. So they see race everywhere. And also those people can watch, can monitor teachers. If a teacher says something in social media, and the CRT officers will get hold of that, and they will. So it's really just like mind control. It's like not mind, thought control or thought police. So that is, that is common in communist countries. But now we have that in America, which is really this is unprecedented.
Yeah, and it's really scary. And when this becomes normalized, what's next?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think anyone has any issue with true diversity or true inclusion.
Right.
But what people, I think, have a hard time with is having these ideals that they had no say-so in forced on you,
Right.
and having a finger pointed at you and saying, because you were unable to be a good person on your own, this is how you're going to behave from here on out.
Right. And they're all going to take you to, you have to take classes, you have to get some educations. I mean, that's exactly what happened during the Cultural Revolution. Like, you have to think, I mean, you have to align yourself with the party. If you think differently, then you have to go to take a training, and then you have to go to a forced labor, or then you have to put in jail. But here, we are not that, we don't went that far, but still, there is always trainings. They think you are, like you say, not as, how, trying to find a good word, not as educate, not just not think in their way, then you have to go through all the trainings.
Yeah, and anyone that thinks differently, they're automatically labeled as
Right.
You're a bigot or racist or
right, exactly.
this or that kind of phobe.
Right.
And it's totally unfair. At what point were we no longer allowed to disagree with people and still respect each other's right to exist?
No, I mean, those people there, their role is really opposite of the name. They are all they come to is conformity, right? Everybody has to think the same way. I mean, think like them. And so there's no diversity, no inclusion. And of course, there's no equity because they got paid a lot more than teachers. There's no equity there, right?
Right.
If you think you have equity, I mean,
And what license do
officer,
they
shouldn't you
have?
pay about the average, right? At least the average. You're not paying. We're not talking about you pay the lowest salary, at least the average. I mean, actually, they get paid pretty high.
Yeah. And what state licensure do they have?
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. They are not. They are just not part of the education system. It's something. It's really through foundations and through right now the federal government pushing that. It's something they not part of education and shouldn't be part of education. Yeah, I think
and a lot of the teachers are afraid to speak up because
yeah,
then the administration and the union turns on them. And
right.
what do you do when the system that's in place to protect you turns on you?
Right. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you can be a very bad teacher and the teachers union still protect you. You can be a very, unethical or incompetent, the teachers union will protect you. But as long as you think something or you say something different from their party line, then they will turn against you. There's no protection at all. And even worse, you'll be persecuted, you'll be harassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if we get onto the school board, we definitely have a lot in our hand. Yeah, I hope that there will be more teachers are willing to speak out. Actually, I'm going to interview a couple of teachers this week because their voice needs to be heard.
Are they Center Grove teachers?
No, yeah. And so far, the teachers I got, they are either resigned or retired. So they are not, there's no retaliation against them.
So I've had several teachers reach out to me, but they don't want me to use their name because they're afraid that they'll be retaliated against.
Yeah, I understand that because that's real. I was a teacher because you don't want to you want to be in good term with administrators.
Yeah.
Because if not, you don't have a good evaluation. And even if you go out to teach in another school, you need recommendation letters, right?
You get blacklisted everywhere.
Yeah, so they actually have, the administrators has a lot of power over teacher. That's why a lot of teachers, they are so afraid. Even though they see things going on that they don't like it. And I think the sad thing is now I have heard a lot of teachers say that they just wants to retire. That's it. They don't want to risk it. They just want to, just keep. I mean, they don't like their job anymore. They cannot teach. They just want to spend a couple more years so that they can retire. And that is very sad for me because, teaching is really to me, is a secret profession because
I think it's more than a profession, it's a calling.
Yeah.
I think that it's up there on par with like the ministry or being a doctor or something. Not everyone can just be like, you know what, I think I'm going to go to school to be a teacher. It has to be something that you really feel passionately like this is what you were called to do.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't think I could be a teacher. I don't have the patience to sit in a room with 30 plus kids that all have their own individual personality and their own issues that they bring with them from the world before they came into the classroom, and then deal with their parents that all have questions and everything else. And then the administrators also, and then figure out how I'm going to lesson plan, and then legislation changes, and then Indiana Department of Education constantly changing things that need to be taught and everything else. And I couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, it is.
I don't know how my wife does it. She's a saint or something.
Well, I think it's how to say, It was not like that 20 years ago. It was not like that 10 years ago. It's just like getting worse, especially in the past 10 years. It's getting like, it's kind of like a take a nosedive. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And I mean, as a teacher, I know there's no way you can teach 30 kids. I mean,
Not effectively.
something has to give, the quality has to suffer. And there is no one-to-one relationship. I mean, if you look at all the private schools, I mean, there's a reason for the ratio. Private schools normally is 1 to 12. And that is teacher, when you have 12 kids in your class, then you have time to, build a relationship. You can have time to, you got to know each other. I mean, each student, but not for 30 kids. But
One of the things that I think COVID showed us last year was with all the e-learning and the hybrid learning, one of the ways you could look at it is it was a failed experiment in automated education.
Yeah.
We've been incorporating technology in K through 12, and in some ways it's made teaching easier. It's probably reduced some costs, not buying textbooks and such. And grading is a lot easier. You're not sitting there going over paper and everything.
Right.
And inputting it into a grade book like they used to do when I was in school.
Right.
But the more you've removed the human element of it and tried to automate it as much as possible, we saw last year across the country, overall scores for schools, that they dropped hard.
Right. Well, one of the things, I mean, because my wife was a teacher, so one of the policies they implemented is that the students don't have to show up. They don't have to, they don't take attendance. So therefore, you won't get all the kids. So what you can do, if you only got like half the class, there's not really much teaching going on, because if you teach this half, what happens next time? People who were not there. So I really don't understand why they had this policy. It just, the common sense just tell you you cannot do that. If you do that, you cannot have any teaching going on. But that's what happened.
Well, that goes back to money. Because for them to get the full amount of money that they're supposed to get, they have to have so many instructional days. So if you start taking attendance on all of those students, and all of the students that didn't log into the Zooms or didn't log into the online, you get so many students that dropped below the total number of instructional days, they don't get full reimbursement.
Okay. So it's a money thing.
Yeah, a lot of it all goes back to money.
But why can't they just say, put it, make them absent? That's how we do, right?
Because it still goes back to the lost instructional time. And there's certain laws in place where if a student misses so many days, it has to be referred to the magistrate for truancy. And the Johnson County courts, they weren't holding court for an extended period of time. So you have all these kids that would technically be truant, and the courts weren't open. So what did they do?
So basically, the administrations just lied to the parents then, or not the parents, lied to the government. They are not taking.
That's the way to look at it. It's kind of like a shell game,
right? To me, that just that's lying.
It's dishonest. Right? It's fiscally dishonest.
Right, definitely dishonest. And that's where the school board should hold the administrations accountable for that.
Yeah. Currently, right now, Center Grove, because of IEPs over the last year and some change, Center Grove is handling several $100,000 worth of lawsuits from IEP violations.
Oh, wow.
Because the state gives the schools extra money per student that has an IEP.
Okay.
And the IEP lays out extra supports that those students are required to receive.
Right.
And if the students don't receive those, the schools can get in a lot of trouble.
Oh.
Well, what do you do to a student that is severely autistic or has Down syndrome or one of the many other qualifying reasons to have autism?
Right.
And you just give them a Chromebook or an iPad and say, okay, well, we have e-learning this year.
Right.
Good
Well,
luck.
I mean, yeah, and also just think back, that is totally unnecessary to, to close schools and send everybody home. That is totally unnecessary because first of all, the kids, they don't even first of all, if they even get COVID, it's not that serious. And they, yeah, it's not, in a way, was not really not driven by science. Is really driven by, in a way,
It was fear.
politics.
The fear in politics. I think
Yeah.
politics drove the fear.
Mhm.
I could understand the first year where they kind of sent everybody home for the remainder of the second semester. It
Right,
was new, it was
right,
scary, people
right.
didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah,
But by the second year,
right,
where most students were either completely e-learning or were hybrid, we had a much better handle on the science,
right.
and it was ignored.
I know, it is.
You know,
We basically lost the whole year of learning.
yeah, I'm an analyst as my profession,
Okay,
and if I were to turn in any of the studies that had been done about the COVID data, any of the early studies anyway,
yeah,
I'd lose my job.
right, yeah,
The data was so polluted.
yeah.
They were intermingling flu data with COVID data,
Hmm.
and it was just it was such horrible quality data. I would have lost my job if I
Yeah,
had turned in that quality of data to my employer.
yeah. Well, that's where the school, especially school administrations, that's kind of a special category because they can mess up school and still have no consequences. If you look at you got to have some measurement, right? If you just look at the I step, means what going down the past 10 years, but nobody was held accountable for that.
Yeah. And with the whole COVID thing, the governor had signed in one of his orders giving the schools and the boards the authority to reopen however they saw
Mhm.
fit. And there's this constant finger pointing between the school board and the administration and the Department of Health and the county Department of Health and the state Department of Health,
Right.
which actually led to Johnson County Department of Health actually signing a letter and making it public saying, hey, look, the governor said on this date in this order, you guys could do whatever you want.
Right, right.
And everybody wanted to ignore that. I actually took the original of that letter and I actually had it blown up really big and laminated it.
Oh, wow.
I actually have it here.
Oh, wow.
I intended to take it to a school board meeting, but they won't let you talk, so it doesn't really do any good to bring it. And schools are back open, and kids are back in class, and right now masks are only strongly recommended
right.
for the time being. So
yeah,
it's kind of a moot point, but
no, but still kind of that's their record, right? At least that's a record of the current school board.
yeah.
And yeah. Well, thank you so much for I always had been wanted to sit down with you and to talk on like this one-on-one, but finally, yeah, I get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, I'd love to work with you in the future.
Yeah, same here, same here. I wish I can get some more teachers, and I don't have to publish it. I don't even have to record it, just like get together and talk about it, right? What's going
You
on?
might be able to set that up. I've got a couple that said that they'd love to meet with me.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah,
So we could set something up.
Okay, I like to be part of it, and I really want my wife is a teacher, and I am a teacher, so I understand the difficulties that teachers are facing, and it's in ways really unfair. I mean, to blame on them, because consider what they got, right? I mean, so we really need to help them so that they can do their job. But right now, I heard so many teachers say, and I understand that too, that they just cannot teach. I mean, all the job is babysitting.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Real quick before we jump off here, I know you and I both have a strong interest in the STEM fields.
Yes.
Did you see that the Johnson County Schools came up with a new early college program for advanced manufacturing?
No.
They did, and they have the deadline to apply for the program is actually tomorrow. So if anyone out there in the internet world sees this tonight, it's actually a great program. My son actually applied for it. He's hoping to get into it.
Okay.
And they've partnered with Milwaukee Tools, NSK, Indris Hauser, and Cummins.
Okay, that's good.
Where they will actually graduate high school with an associate degree from Ivy Tech. And it's a direct transfer to Indiana State. And at the end of the program, it guarantees employment at one of those industry partners. And junior and senior year, it actually provides for paid work experience also.
Okay.
And at the end of the program, the students would have 1,200 hours of paid work experience, which is enough to get them into one of the union shops.
Oh, neat.
And several industry certifications.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So I've got your email. I can send you the brochure that they sent me. So it looks like a really cool program.
Right. Do you know enough parents know about it?
So they sent it out to a lot of the 8th grade parents in Skyward.
Okay.
And I think February 1st at Whiteland High School, they had like a parent meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha.
We weren't able to go to the parent meeting. So I actually spoke to Mrs. Ferguson, the woman kind of in charge of student services, I believe, at the high school yesterday or the day before. And she took some time to talk to me about it. It was a really cool program. She's pretty excited about it.
So this is for incoming freshmen, right?
Yes, it's a brand new program starting next year.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I hope there is more programs like that, so they have more choices.
Yeah, they have an early college program already, but this one is specifically geared towards
advanced manufacturing. Yeah,
manufacturing, automation,
right,
robotics, things like that.
Right,
things
right,
that are pretty close to the future of manufacturing.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. That's where the manufacturer will be. Yeah. Mostly you work with robots.
Yeah.
A lot of programming and a lot of, maintaining all the machineries and all that. It's just good field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all free too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because that's.
There's really no reason for these students to get out of high school and get burdened with $60,000, $80,000 worth of student loans, when they can finish high school with a degree, with work experience, completely debt free.
Well, I think that's something parents has to change their way of thinking, because when I was teaching at the GCA, most parents, they just think their kids has to go to college. It's like, go to college, doesn't matter what kind of college. But nowadays, just like you said, if we just go to some majors that, there is a gender study, right? You have whatever, all kinds of
you hear about this crisis of student loans and everything else, and they're talking about, well, should we just forgive the student loans? Well, what's that going to do to our economy? And what
Right.
message does that send to all the people that have paid off their student loans?
Right, right. And
I just paid
also,
off my student loans at the end of 2021.
right,
So now if they give everyone forgiveness on all those student loans, I want a check.
right. And also, it's only make the colleges to raise their price.
Right.
I mean, this is just wrong. I mean, this is a wrong way of doing things. But unfortunately, that's what we have. Yeah. But I think at the local level, at least we definitely can do something at the school board and make sure at least the kids in Center Grove can have good education.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. I emailed that
Sure.
information to you.
Yep. Okay. I'll see you next time. Okay.
All right. I look
Okay.
forward to it.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.